So, the latest issue of Doctor Who magazine has come out, as it does every month, or every 4 weeks to be more precise. But in the July 2026 issue, or August 2026 issue as it will say on the cover, it came with its inclusion to Circuit Breaker, a 20-page, roughly, comic called The Honourable Society, featuring the Fugitive Doctor meeting the Sontarans. And I thought, we haven't really talked about the multimedia projects on this channel very much. Of course, Matt reviewed the 3 8th Doctor Time Lord Victorious audios, as well as the 2 TLV short trips in a video, although he did not cover Echoes of Extinction or Genetics of the Daleks. And in another video covered the 2 books from TLV, and I did the Circuit Breaker announcement video. But we never touched upon Doomsday, the second of these 3 multimedia projects. Doomsday didn't get a compilation Blu-ray like Road to the Dark Times for Time Lord Victorious or the Circuit Breaker compilation coming up. Now, the reason for this is obviously because Doom's an original character, and there's not many stories that could tie in with her story, or the stories that are making up the Doomsday storyline. So I thought I would challenge myself to see what stories could go on a hypothetical Doomsday Blu-ray release to be released at the end of October, start of November 2023, following the Doomsday stuff being finished. Let's say this is a bonus release after it's all done, like that web game the BBC put out. And trying to see what stories could go on this release and how it could tie in to the storylines or to characters Doom meets along her journey. Now, obviously, none of these would tie directly into Doomsday itself, but it's a fun exercise of what we could do regarding a potential theoretical release to tie in with Doomsday. Obviously, again, none of these probably would fit as well as the ones for Road to the Dark Times or the upcoming Circuit Breaker compilation, but let's give it a go. Let's see what we could try. There are several stories we can go, and I've got a couple of lists that could work out. So, let's get rolling. So before I start choosing stories for a hypothetical Doomsday release to tie in with that, let's have a quick look at which stories are on the Time Lord Victorious release and on the upcoming Circuit Breaker release. So the stories on both releases are all ones that were previously released on Blu-ray prior to these compilations. So in the case of Time Lord Victorious, we have Planet of the Daleks from Season 10, Genesis of the Daleks from Season 12, The Deadly Assassin from Season 14, State of Decay from Season 18, The Curse of Fenric from Season 26, The Runaway Bride from Series 3, and The Waters of Mars from the Series 4 specials, all of which were released on Blu-ray by the end of 2020 when this Blu-ray came out. This was like November 2020, so all of these stories were available on Blu-ray before November 2020. In the case of The Curse of Fenric, the Season 26 box set was released in January 2020. I should also clarify that this will probably include the 2013 upscale for Runaway Bride for the Blu-ray releases for Series 1 to 4 from the Series 1 to 7 box set, and later the individual releases in 2015. For the upcoming Circuit Breaker one, they're more likely to use the more recent 2023 upscale versions, but that box set came out in November 2023, so I'm not really sure if it will be those versions or the older 2013 ones for the new series stories that will be included on Doomsday's release. Prior to Planet of the Dead, everything from Planet of the Dead onwards is proper HD. As for Circuit Breaker's upcoming releases, now these stories are not in the chronological order like Time Lord Victorious, but rather more in the order connected to what's being released as part of the Circuit Breaker storyline. So, first of all, Fugitive of the Judoon is tying in to the first online web thing that you read, calling the Fugitive Doctor. So this is our introduction to the Fugitive Doctor as a character. Then we have Dalek, which is tying into the first of the 2 Dalek Titan comics. The Sontaran Stratagem, The Poison Sky, tying in with the more recent The Honourable Society. Time Heist, which is tying in with the upcoming BBC audiobook with the Memory Worm. And also the Cybermen, and I'm a bit disappointed there's no Cyberman story on there, especially since it's a Earthshock / 80s Cyberman in that, and there's no Earthshock, Attack of the Cybermen, Silver Nemesis, or Five Doctors on here. But the only classic story we do have is Genesis of the Daleks, which is also on this one. So you got crossover ones, and it's the only classic series story on the Doomsday set, and that's because the second Titan comic one is going to tie in with Genesis of the Daleks. Well, just like the fact that they don't have an 80s Cyberman story on here, it's because they're tying in the story, the characters or the objects they have. Although, interestingly, on the front page of where it's talking about the 8 objects, it's saying all of these objects relate to an incarnation of the Doctor, but most of them are 10th Doctor. What a fucking surprise. I love the 10th Doctor, but oh, come on, guys. There are other Doctors out there. And we're going to have 3 back-to-back 10th Doctor stories on this list, not including the Sontaran strategy, which makes 4. But yeah, next up on that list is Flux Chapter 2, or the Sontarans, which is an episode of Flux, but Flux is a 6-part story. This is just the single episode. There are people talking outside. I do apologise. That's to do with the other Sontaran thing. They have 2 Sontaran things, but they don't have a Cyberman thing outside of the Cyberman appearance in the Memory Worm story. And it's not even the same medium like the Titan comics, Dalek stories. Choices. Then we have Blink, because there's going to be a Weeping Angel story for the online reading thing. Then the Shakespeare Code. Choice to do a Gareth Roberts story with the Charonite Globe, and that's going to tie in with the Puffin short story. Then the Gun in the Fireplace, which is going to tie into the other game with the Clockwork Droid face. Then the Impossible Astronaut Day of the Moon, which is going to tie in with the fact the Silencer in the Kaleidoscope book. So those are choice stories. And I'm going to go through the Doomsday stories and who's appearing in those and what medium they are before we get to looking at episodes that could theoretically make the Doomsday Blu-ray release. So the first hour is the online prose thing, which sees Doom meet the first Doctor, and apparently there's a Jadoon captain or something in there as well. So I put Jadoon down as appearing. The second through 5th hours form the DWM supplement comic 4 Hours to Doomsday. The first one is Target Selected. I remember that basically just being a page. Just Doom goes to Storm Cage and talks to River Song for like a page of the comic, and then the other 3 stories are a bit longer. So that's River Song in that story. Hour 3 is the Plastic Population, which sees Doom meets the 6th Doctor and the Autons. So we got our first Doctor outside of the first Doctor himself. So we got the first of the other Doctors. I should say Doom does not meet all of the Doctors up to Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor. It's only a select number. There are several Doctors who don't appear in the stories. However, they will have stories recommended for the Blu-ray as on the long list and even short list of the Blu-ray when we get to that, because characters from those stories will turn up, or events from Doom's adventure might tie in with those. Hour 4 is High Noon in Hollywood, which features the Cybermen. And the final one, The Hornell Dynamo, features Joe Grant. Hours 6 through 9 are part of Titan Comics' A Doctor in the House releases. Titan did 2 comics that would span 2 hours each, and both comics, all 4 hours, would be included in the compilation release at the end of the year. But each hour is still treated individually. Missy appears in both of these comics and in the full Doctor in the House 4-hour storyline. But we also have the Roger Delgado Master appear in the second of the first 2 hours, and the 12th Doctor makes a cameo at the very end of the final hour. Hour 10 is the first of the 2 Lost in Time games, AI and the Doctor, which features Chameleon, K9, and also Syl's in the background. So Syl's in this for some reason. Also, the 13th Doctor is the presenter of the game, and also Chameleon is disguised as the 13th Doctor for a bit before shredding the disguise. Technically, the real 13th Doctor doesn't appear in this, nor the other Lost in Time Doomsday game, but are considered the presenters, so like maybe they're going through it with the audience, perhaps, or the player, perhaps. I don't play Lost in Time, I'm not really certain, I'm just going from what the wiki says. Hours 11 to 14 are part of Extraction Point, which is the book, which I haven't mentioned on the list. It's the book that BBC Books released to tie in. You know, the one that's really hard to get now, even though it's only 3 years old, and the 2 Time Lord Victorious ones are like 5 or 6 years old. but the Doomsday one seems to be the harder one to get. Ah, well, the first hour features the Kralls, the second has the Ninth Doctor, the third has the Slitheen, and the fourth has the Second Doctor. Or at least that's what I presume from the way the wiki puts it, because apparently there's sort of a conspiracy going through these 4 hours that ties in the Krall, Ninth Doctor, Slitheen, and Second Doctor hours all together. I'm presuming there's separate hours, but they all could be tied together. Maybe the Slitheen and the Second Doctor in the same 2 hours. Maybe the Ninth Doctor meets the Kralls. I don't know. I haven't read this book. I can't even get this book because no one seems to be bloody selling it. Unless it's on eBay somewhere. And the wiki hasn't updated the plot synopsis yet, so I can't do further research. So I'm just going to say each hour's for those specific characters, or 2 hours and they sort of interact with each other. If you've read the book, comment down below the plot, or the basic plot, or the structure at least of Extraction Point, because nobody else seems to want to do it or want to sell it to people who would be like, okay, that's what's going on. Hour 15, Lost in Time, Wrong Place at the Wrong Time. This is the second of the Lost in Time games, and as well as Chameleon, which I forgot to mention here, even though he was on the other one and he's in both, and K9, it also features Rusty the Dalek and Syl again. Also, the 13th Doctor is back as presenter. Hours 16 to 19 form the From Doomsday BBC audio book. And the stories in that are The Steel Cascade, which feature Ian and Barbara. The Martian Dilemma, which features the Ice Warriors. And Ood Halloween, which features Brian the Ood from Time Lord Victorious. So that's a nice little crossover between the two multimedia storyline stories. And Dark Space, where Doom meets the 12th Doctor. He only cameoed at the end of A Doctor in the House, so this is the only proper meeting for them. But it does mean that the 12th and 13th Doctors are the 2 Doctors that get the most amount of stories, besides the first Doctor, who is the main Doctor for this event, due to it being the one Doom is looking for. Although, again, as I mentioned, there's caveats to both of them, meaning the first Doctor's the one who actually gets the most number of stories with Doomsday. Rounding off the last 4 hours before the final hour is the Big Finish box set, Dying Hours, with the first story being Dawn of an Everlasting Peace, which is an interesting one. It ties in with Dalek's Master Plan. It's like a prequel to that, and features Mavic Chen second in command, Carlton, as well as 2 of the delegates, Trantis second specifically, and Malva. So both those characters, all those characters appear in this story, and I would so love to have put Dalek's Master Plan on the Blu-ray box set, but 7 episodes are fucking missing. And at the time of this Blu-ray set coming out, so would the 2 more recently found ones. So that's one we absolutely can't include on the Blu-ray, is Dalek's Master Plan, even though it would be perfect for it. Although I do have an ace up my sleeve for a bonus content release inclusion. Then we've got Dated with Destiny, which is where Doom meets Jackie Tyler. Insert your Big Finish Jackie Tyler story memes here. Then the Howling Wolves of Zanpir, where Doom meets the Silent. And lastly, The Crowd, where Doom meets the 8th Doctor and Charlie Pollard. Finally, the Out of Time online pro story, where everything comes together and Doom reunites with the First Doctor, and there's some anticlimactic revelations. If this was maybe an audio or visual story, maybe it would be more satisfying. Also, there's the bonus web game Doom's Minute, which doesn't really feature the characters aside from Doom, although you seem to be playing as Doom, but they apparently have cards that feature Doom, the Silence, Ood, Ice Warriors, and Sidemen. I think we can put that to the side and focus on the main 24 stories for what we are going to include on the Blu-ray release, with the stories that include those characters or tie into some of the Doomsday events, and see what we can work with. Before we get started on the long list of which episodes could go on the set, and then we'll go to a short list of which ones we would include on an official release, I'm going to lay out some rules. So all episodes must have been released on Blu-ray by the end of October 2023. So every classic series box set that was up to season 20's release, which would have been September 2023, and all the animations for the first and second Doctors up to the Abominable Snowmen, the Underwater Menace, would be released in November. And whilst I would be okay including a story that was going to be on an upcoming collection box set release and say, you get this story early, you get to have this one on a compilation Blu-ray disc early. Like if, say, season 11 was next and they put the Time Warrior on the Circuit Breaker one. But an individual story release, probably not worth it. As for the upscale New Who episodes from series 1 to 4 that would go on the list, possibly, depending if they were saving them all to be released together, or they'll put some on a compilation early. So I can use any story from classic seasons 2, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 17, 18, 19, the recently at the time of the hypothetical release date, season 20, seasons 22, 23, 24, and 26. No season 25, that would be the next year. No seasons 15, that would be a few months after this hypothetical release. No season 25, no season 7, no season 13, no season... What's the most recent one? 21. No season 21. And absolutely no season that we haven't had announced to be coming out yet at time of this video coming out. So that's seasons 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 11 and 16. Which kind of makes it tough for the second Doctor inclusion. As I mentioned, the animated stories since Power of the Daleks up to the Abominable Snowmen, so 2016 to 2022, possibly maybe the Underwater Menace, but that's a bit of a push, and then anything after that is not allowed to be included. And also the part animated stories before that also can't be included, because, or nor the in colour ones, because they either haven't had Blu-ray releases yet, or they would not have come out yet, so can't do the Daleks or the War Games in colour. The TV movie is also eligible to be on this list, but again, it would be the 2016 upscale version for that year's Blu-ray release, as opposed to the more recent restoration version, the upscale to 4K, for the 2026 Blu-ray and 4K releases. And of course entitled the new series as of the Power of the Doctor, but again, rose to the next Doctor, it would more likely be the 2013 upscaled episodes rather than the 2023 upscaled episodes for their respective Blu-ray releases. But maybe on this hypothetical release, those episodes might be the 2023 upscales, and they've been released a little bit earlier than the series 1 to 4 box set that would have come out a month later. So I'm going to do a long list of 18 potential episodes, as well as mention some others that were under consideration, before we get to a short list of 12 episodes. I was aiming for 6 to 12. 8 seemed fairly preferable, because that would be between Time Lord Victorious' 7 and Doomsday's 10. Also, 6 and 12 are a quarter and half of 24 respectively, with 8 also being a third. Going for 12, that does mean we have roughly a story for every 2 hours of Doomsday, although the total number of episodes is more due to multi-parters for the classic stories and even some new episodes. But we'll go through the long list and a couple of other contenders, and then we'll get to what I'm going on for a short list. By the way, the long list is in order of just picking and choosing episodes based on what I could see on the list of the Doomsday stories, and then the short list is in chronological release order. So the first one I put down as an option was The Long Game, as this ties into Extraction Point Hour 2. It's a 9th Doctor episode, and on the Extraction Point page on the wiki it said that Kathika is mentioned, and it looks like it's set on Satellite 5 a few years after the events of The Long Game. So I thought that would be a good option to put on the release, even if it's not a final option. It's a good one to start the suggestions. And sticking with the 9th Doctor for an alternative option for his Doctor, we have Aliens of London and World War III, which connects to also Extraction Point, due to having the Slitheen involved. Now, I originally had Boomtown on this list, as there was just one Slitheen mentioned on the main Doomsday page. However, if the story more centres around the family Slitheen rather than a soul Slitheen, then Aliens of London works better than Boomtown, and World War III works better than Boomtown if it's centred on the family, if it's centred on a group of Slitheen doing stuff rather than a soul Slitheen, because if it was a soul Slitheen, Boomtown's better. So I'll put Boomtown as an honourable alternate option. Thirdly is The Trial of a Time Lord, parts 5 to 8, Mind Warp. This connects with the plastic population with the 6th Doctor, and AI and the Doctor and wrong place at the wrong time with Sil. I actually originally had mentions from Varos on here, but since Circuit Breaker is going to have an episode from Flux, even though that's a 6-part story, it's still taking one of those chapters to include, and each episode is somewhat can be viewed individually as well as in a 6-part story. Trial of the Time Lord sort of does a similar thing, but with like 3-4 parts and a 2-part story that just so that are connected to each other as one 14-part story. But you can watch them as a couple 4-parters and a 2-parter. Mind Warp's the second of the 3 4-parters of that, or what would be a 4-parter that season. So I've put that down as, so I put parts 5 to 8 of the Trial of the Time Lord on here, similar to part 2 of Flux, or chapter 2 of Flux on the Circuit Breaker release. So Mind Warp it is. They're about the same length anyway. Aside from maybe a 10-minute difference, they're about the same length. Then number 4 is The Wedding of River Song, which connects to Target Selected with the appearance of River Song, and The Howling Wolves of Zanpir with the appearance of The Silence. This is the only episode outside of The Impossible Astronaut Day of the Moon to feature both River Song and The Silence. In fact, I think the only other episode featuring The Silence is The Time of the Doctor and a cameo in Revolution of the Daleks on screen, plus some minisodes. So yeah, I could have gone with another River Song episode for just her, but The Silence, you don't really have much of a choice. It's this or the Series 6 opener, which is being included on Doomsday. And apart from one consideration for the long list, and then also almost made it to the short list, but then I changed my mind about including it on either list, which I might talk about later. I do not want to have any repeats from either the upcoming Circuit Breaker or the already released Road to the Dark Times for Time Lord Victorious. As I mentioned, Genesis of the Daleks is being repeated from both of these sets. I want to try and avoid doing that again. Genesis, at the very least, is because it is tying into the Circuit Breaker stuff with the Time Ring and the Titan Comics thing, and it's been selected as a Time Lord Victorious tie-in story regarding the Dalek Empire. But I want to try and avoid repeating stories across in this set from one or the other of the sets either side of it in this hypothetical scenario. I want to try avoiding that as much as possible, but there was one story that was considered that would have repeated with Circuit Breaker. I might discuss that later. So for a silent and River Song story that isn't the Series 6 opener, it's got to be the Series 6 finale instead. Now, I didn't say all of these are going to be banger episodes. I'm just choosing episodes featuring the characters that would be best options or suggestions for this release. Similar to how Circuit Breaker has got episodes tying into the characters or the objects or the scenarios. And Road to the Dark Times for TLV, again, tying into all that. So it's not necessarily the best episodes ever made that are going on the release. It's the best episodes that we can get tying into characters or scenarios from these multimedia storylines. So yeah, there's going to be a couple stories that aren't really considered really great by the fans, but would be best for the tie-ins, if you can see where I'm coming from. The 5th option was Planet of the Ood, as it connects with an Ood Halloween. There isn't anything with Brian Ood in the TV series, so Planet of the Ood's a good single episode story featuring the Ood that can go on here. Impossible Planet Satan Pit and The Doctor's Wife are also possible options for the Ood, as they appear in those stories prominently, and also the last 2 episodes of Flux, and Pond Life. But I think Planet of the Ood is the best one to go for if you're centering it on the Ood themselves, and the End of Time, and Waters of Mars, they appear in those as well. But Planet of the Ood is the best one to go for if you're centering it on the Ood as a whole. Number 6 is Into the Dalek, as it connects with Wrong Place at the Wrong Time, as Rusty's in that, and Dark Spaces. It's a 12th Doctor episode. This is one of 2 Dalek stories on this list. At one point it was the only one. I was swapping out the other one with another option and also non-Dalek story options before I settled on what that one's going to be. But Into the Dalek has Rusty the Dalek. Twice Upon a Time also features Rusty, and it is also a 12th Doctor story and First Doctor, but I think Into the Dalek would be more of the suggestive option. If this set was real, this would make more, and this story was on the shortlist, it would make more sense than Twice Upon a Time, as it's more focused on Rusty the Dalek, as well as the Doctor's relationship with the Daleks. Number 7 on the long list is Terror of the Autons, which is definitely a story that would make a lot of sense to be on this set, and that connects to the plastic population with the Autons. Spearhead from Space was available on Blu-ray, so that story could have been an option. But Terror of the Autons also introduces 3 main new characters for the Third Doctor era. One of them is Captain Mike Yates, but specifically the Circuit Breaker. The other 2 are Joe Grant and the Master, specifically the Roger Delgado incarnation, both of whom appear in stories in Doomsday. Joe in The Horn of Dilemma, and the Roger Delgado Master in A Doctor in the House. It's looking at the second hour by the way the wiki has listed it, or second hour of Doomsday 1 for the individual releases. So Terror of the Autons is a very strong suggestion for being included on this hypothetical release, as it knocks out 3 birds in 1 stone. Effectively, you've got Autons, Joe Grant, and the Roger Delgado Master. Tick, tick, tick. And whilst the Third Doctor doesn't appear in Doomsday, it is a Third Doctor story, so a bonus tick. Also, the Brigadier. Extra bonus tick. Can't go wrong with the Brigadier. Actually, that is interesting. There is no unit anything in Doomsday, as far as I'm aware, or Town Hall Victoria's, come to think of it. Oh, well, they've got their co-leads of Circuit Breaker to make up for that. The 8th story suggestion was the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Now, this one was a tricky one to settle on. I was going for a First Doctor story, and also a story that features Ian and Barbara, as that connects to the Steel Cascade. The First Doctor is, of course, in both Hour 1 and Out of Time, and is technically the main Doctor of this multimedia storyline. The First Doctor is the Doctor Doom is looking for after meeting him at the beginning, and she finds him again at the end. So I wanted the First Doctor story, and with Ian and Barbara, and only stories from season 2, plus the animated Galaxy 4, and later Celestial Toymaker and Savages, which couldn't go on this list, and also the Daleks in Colour, as they would be released later. But only the season 2 stories and Galaxy 4's animation could be contenders, but apart from Time Meddler and Galaxy 4, all of those have Ian and Barbara. So I was going to go with The Chase, which is also another Dalek story. But then I thought about using another story. I was thinking about using the Romans as an option, or the Space Museum. If I was, or Planet of Giants, if I was sticking to 3 or 4 parters. And then I decided to use the Aztecs. And then just as I had put my Word document onto Google Drive, for the purposes of this video, I realized, oh shit, the Aztecs is from season 1, and season 1's not out on Blu-ray yet, and that story hasn't had an individual Blu-ray release. I cannot include that story. And I decided to make it another Dalek story, in case Into the Dalek doesn't make the shortlist. If that was one of the ones I had to decide, hey, some stories not to put on this, we have to lose some stories. If Into the Dalek doesn't make it, we've got a Dalek story included. And I think Invasion Earth makes more sense than The Chase, because even though that's Ian and Barbara's last story, Dalek Invasion Earth also has Susan in it, who is considered the first companion, and also it's the 60th anniversary, so you'd have the original TARDIS team together. It's the second Dalek story, and also 2023 was voted the #1 First Doctor story by readers of Doctor Who magazine. At least in the individual Doctors poll anyway. So I think Dalek Invasion of Earth makes more sense than The Chase for more factors surrounding that story than The Chase, even though the same factors apply regarding the Doomsday tie-in. But for the significance of Invasion Earths as a story outdoes The Chase's significance, so I'm going to select this story as an option. But The Chase was also an option, and also, as mentioned, the Romans and the Space Museum and Planet of Giants were all under consideration. Both the Planet of Giants and the Romans were even put on the long list initially before being swapped out. Romans, then Planet, and then Invasion Earth. Actually, Aztecs, then Invasion Earth. Again, well, yeah, trying to cycle through a couple of options. Number 9, Love and Monsters. Now, this one connects with Days of Destiny, and it's the Jackie Tyler story. Now, if we were choosing a episode featuring Jackie Tyler to go on this set that ties in with A Date with Destiny, so excluding the Sliving 2 parts we already mentioned, Love and Monsters makes the most amount of sense because A Date with Destiny is a story that has Doom go and see Jackie Tyler without the Doctor and Rose turning up. Love and Monsters, the Doctor and Rose, whilst they do appear in some scenes on present day Earth, they don't interact with Jackie Tyler on screen. The only interaction we're aware of in that episode between them is Rose finding out that Elton Pope upset her mum. That's the only information we get of them having any interaction. And even then, that might even be a phone call or something. So Love and Monsters is the perfect choice for a Date with Destiny episode tie-in, as it's the only on-screen episode where the Doctor and Rose do not interact with Jackie Tyler, but they're all in the same episode. Or at least don't interact on screen. Number 12, The Faceless Ones animation. This is my second Doctor story choice. I did consider the Macro Terror, but I think the Chameleons have a little bit more resemblance. They don't resemble the Sliving, but them being more green. Certainly in the live action episodes where they're green, paper mache looking sort of things, and then the newer one is the kind of the melded faces sort of deal, creature designs. But either way, I think the Faceless Ones has a little bit more connection to the Slivine, and considering this is tying in with Extraction Point, more so Hour 4, then as that's the primary second Doctor appearance, at least as far as the wiki is listing everybody. So I mean, maybe they're all mixed together for a couple of hours. But yeah, this is a connection to Extraction Point. So I think the Chameleons look a little bit closer to the Sliving than the Macro do. So yeah, but the Macro Terror is also an option, and I suppose Fury from the Deep could also count. Underwater Menace as well, if you wanted to release that as part of this set a few weeks ahead of its individual release. But again, I don't know if they would do that for an individual release story. For a collection set or for the new series, upscaled Blu-rays, episodes from that, yeah, I could see them coming out a little bit earlier. But for the individual release, maybe not. Then again, at the time of when this set would get released, the BFI screening of the Underwater Menace, which me and Will went to, by the way, would have happened around the same time. So, I mean, it's not out of the possibility, but I'm going to say unlikely for that one. So, as well as Faceless Ones, the other options would have been Macro Terror or Fury from the Deep animations. Possibly Underwater Menace, but again, pushing it a little bit. Also, The Web of Fear, as that is, apart from Episode 3, the only second Doctor story on Blu-ray with mostly the surviving episodes, the live-action ones, as that they probably got upscaled for the Blu-ray release. Especially since the black and white version of the animated third episode was with the surviving episodes, and the colour version was on the other disc as a bonus. So that is also an option if you wanted a primarily live action second Doctor story with one animated episode that has been released on Blu-ray. Web of Fear is the choice. Shame about the animation, of course, but that's another option. Number 11 is Cold War, which connects to the Martian dilemma. I considered the Curse of Peladon and Empress of Mars. I decided I would go for Cold War, as that's the story that introduces the Ice Warriors back to the new series, and Curse of Peladon's more Peladon focused, and I've got a few other options for 12th Doctor stories over Empress of Mars that would work better, even some of the ones that wouldn't make a shortlist. As for the other three, none of them have come to Blu-ray yet. Number 12 is Extremis, which connects to A Doctor in the House and Dark Space, as it is a 12th Doctor / Missy story. I'll actually, with this, as well as the Cybermen, which I've got listed coming up in a little bit. I've got a Cyberman story listed coming up soon. So I initially had World Enough in Time and the Doctor Falls listed, and that covered 12th Doctor, Missy, Cybermen. But I changed my 13th Doctor story that I had on the long list. I was going to have Fugitive of the Jadoon to cover the 13th Doctor and the Jadoon, who appear in Hour 1, or at least A Jadoon does. And that was the story that would be shared with Circuit Breaker. That would cross over with them. But then I decided to change my 13th Doctor episode. And I've changed my Jadoon episode. I've added a different Jadoon episode on, so I've changed my 13th Doctor one, which ended up being a Cyberman episode. So I'll get onto that soon. But that meant I had 2 Cybermen stories on, and whilst that could have been okay, I've got 2 Dalek stories on the long list. Whilst World Enough for Time Doctor Falls is a really good option, I thought it would be better to choose another 12th Doctor Missy story instead. I did consider Magician's Apprentice, which is familiar, and Dark Water and Death in Heaven, but I decided to go with Extremis, as that's more. Well, it's not necessarily Missy focused. I think there's a couple scenes in both it and Live the Land that are Missy focused, but the stories as a whole aren't Missy focused. It's those other 3 stories I mentioned that are more somewhat Missy focused, maybe less so with the Series 9 opener, but the Series 8 and 10 finales definitely have a lot of Missy focus. So, but I thought Extremis, outside of those 3 2-parters, I thought was the next most prominent Missy TV story, so I decided to put that down. It's also the first of the trilogy with the monks, so it's a good example of a Series 10 episode outside of the finale. Number 13 is the TV movie, both because it features the 8th Doctor from The Crowd, but also an Ood Halloween, and I noticed this when going back to have a look at some other things and updating the list after realising I made a mistake with the Aztecs being on it. And having another quick little look, I noticed that an Ood Halloween takes place in San Francisco, 1999. Brian Ood is there for some reason, like he's turning up at during the events of the TV movie or something, or maybe a bit before, but yeah. So essentially that story either takes place around the same time as the TV movie, or at least same place, same year. So yeah, that's a good case for the TV movie to be put down on the list. Again, this would be the upscaled version for the 2016 Blu-ray rather than the 4K remaster for the restored Blu-ray and 4K release from this year. Number 15 is The King's Demons, and this is because of Comedian. Planet of Fire was not on Blu-ray at this point in time, so it has to be The King's Demons for the Comedian connection. So that connects with AI and the Doctor, and also Wrong Place, Wrong Time. Number 16, School Reunion, is next, and that connects with both those stories as well, with K9's appearance. I actually struggled with a K9 story because season 15 wasn't out yet, otherwise I would have used Invisible Enemy. My only choices were season 17 and 18 stories for Classic Who, and I was initially going to put Sharda down, because season 18, K9's created like crap in that series. No story from that is really a good suggestion. Maybe I did consider Full Circle, Warrior's Gate, and State of Decay would cross over with Time Lord Victorious releases. It's on that one. Season 17, he's not in City of Death, the best episode of those seasons. One of the best episodes of Fourth Doctor, in my opinion. Shout out to Matt Moyer. He would probably agree with me on this. And Destiny of the Daleks, whilst he's in it, he's not really doing much. He's a bit unwell, so yeah. And neither of K9's 2 regular voice actors voice him there. Neither John Leeson nor David Beardley, who voiced him in the rest of the season. It's actually Roy Skelton, apparently, doing those sick K9 voices. And then the other stories of season 17, aside from Sharda, I didn't really think were that better. Showcasing K9, then maybe Nightmare of Eden. I don't know, but I thought, I'll go for the novelty of Sharda, but then I thought, actually, you know what, fuck it, let's go with School Reunion, because School Reunion is probably the easiest option to go for, aside from Invisible Enemy. Also, we're not doing spin-offs, so Kanan and Company Girl's Best Friend wouldn't be included. Nor would any episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures. I forgot to do number 14, I went straight to The King's Demons after doing the TV movie. Haunting of Villa Diodati is number 14 on the long list, and that connects with High Noon in Hollywood, with the Cybermen, AI and the Doctor, and Wrong Place at the Wrong Time with the 13th Doctor. Even though it was Comedian in Disguise, but apparently the 13th Doctor is the presenters of those stories, so yeah, after Fugitive of the Jadoon got taken out, I needed a new 13th Doctor story, so I put this one down, and it covers the Cybermen as well. Which is why I swapped World Enough in Time Doctor Falls with Extremis. But if I was to choose a different 13th Doctor story instead of this, and World Enough in Time Doctor Falls was put back in for the 12th Doctor and Missy, and added the Cybermen for that, alternate 13th Doctor options would be The Woman Who Fell to Earth and The Power of the Doctor Coming Straight Away. To be honest, any 13th Doctor story could do, because she's just presenter of these two stories and Chameleon in Disguise in one of them. The reason I added this particular episode is it is a single part Cyberman story. It does tie into the next two-parter afterwards, but you can watch this one in isolation as well. And now going back to number 17, because I took out Fugitive of the Jadoon, I needed a new Jadoon story for the longest of time with Hour 1, which is Smith and Jones, the first Jadoon appearance. Now this one is just basically to fill out a Jadoon slot, since they appear in Doomsday, or at least briefly. And finally, I've got one more bonus option, number 18, Mission to the Unknown, U-Clan remake version. The U-Clan, so basically the University of Central Lancashire's remake version of Mission to the Unknown from 2019. Technically, it was filmed in HD, so it's, I mean, they'll probably be on a future Mission to the Unknown, Dalek Master Plan, or Season 3 release as a bonus feature, as an alternate viewing option. But yeah, since we can't have the proper The Daleks Master Plan or the proper Mission to the Unknown to tie in with Dawn of an Everlasting Peace, and as its first Doctor story, Hour 1, even though he's not in this one. Even though we can't use the original nor Master Plan, we do have this as a bonus option story, a wild card ace up our sleeves as a potential extra episode, a bonus episode, if you will, which could, even if it doesn't make the shortlist of episodes, it could even be put in as a bonus feature. Before getting to the shortlist, I will also clarify there are no 7th Doctor stories on this list. All of the other Doctors have been up to 13 have been touched. There is no 7th Doctor, also no War Doctor, and with the removal of Fugitive of the Jadoon, no Fugitive Doctor. Again, although if Power of the Doctor was put in place of Haunting of Villa Diodati, that one does feature the Fugitive Doctor, as well as also the 1st, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Doctors. And the 7th Doctor does appear in the TV movie. But for completions, if I wanted to include a 7th Doctor story, I'd be royally screwed, because there is no 7th Doctor story or character tying in with Doomsday. My closest was Silver Nemesis with the Cybermen, as an alternative to Haunting of Villa Diodati, but Season 25 wouldn't be released on Blu-ray for another year after this hypothetical release. So I can't use anything from Season 25, and nothing from 24 or 26 tie into it. So my next closest is either Battlefield had anything from Unit turned up, or Survival, just for the sake of it. Honestly, there is no other choice or Curse of Fenric, just to have another story that crosses releases. It fits perfectly for TLV. It wouldn't fit for Doomsday. There is no story from the McCoy era that would go on a Doomsday release just because it ties in with a story or any of the character features. There's no 7th Doctor Doomsday story, no Ace, no Bell, no Anthony Amy Master, no Kato Mara Rani, no Davros, no Silver Nemesis Cybermen, nothing. No Fenric, none of that. No, not even a unit, not even Unit. So I could have used as my selection there, and I can't use anything from Season 25 if I did want to say, here's a Dalek or Cyberman story. So we are not putting any 7th Doctor stories on this list aside from the TV movie, which is actually more of an 8th Doctor story. So no 7th Doctor stories on this list apart from the movie. And that's a bit disappointing, but I'm working what I'm given. Similarly with the War Doctor. Now, I did hear that there might have been something to do with Zygons in this. I could be wrong about that. So let's say Day of the Doctor for the War Doctor choice, because that would cover the Zygon. If the Zygons are in, that covers them. Season 13 wasn't out yet, so that would be 2 years after this set would come out. So we know Terror of the Zygons, and we got enough 12th Doctor stories on here. And to be honest, Day of the Doctor is almost as long as the Series 9 Zygon story. So cover the War Doctor as well. That one would go on there. But I'm not sure if the Zygons are in Circuit Breaker. I could be wrong about that. But in case they are, Day of the Doctor would cover that story, and it fits the War Doctor. And as mentioned, with a possible future Doctor story replacing Fugitive of the Jadoon, again, if we put Power of the Doctor on instead of Haunting of Villa Diodati, in which case Extremis would swap back to World Enough in Time Doctor Falls. But I'm sticking with the long list as I have now settled upon it. And now the fun but also more difficult bit, cutting down 18 long list episodes into 8 to 12 short list episodes. I've settled on 12, which is basically a story per 2 hours of Doomsday. So, in story release / chronological order this time, as opposed to the long list, which was just looking at these stories and jotting them down here and swapping for a few round and so forth, even swapping some placements around. So, on the shortlist, I have The Dalek Invasion of Earth, which covers our First Doctor and Ian and Barbara inclusions in Doomsday. The Faceless Ones, which covers our Second Doctor inclusion. Terror of the Autons, which covers the Joe Grant and Roger Delgado Master and the Autons inclusion in Doomsday. The King's Demons, which covers Chameleon's inclusion in Doomsday. The Trial of a Time Lord, parts 5 to 8, Mind Warp, which covers the Sixth Doctor and Syl's inclusion in Doomsday. Doctor Who, the Movie, which covers the Eighth Doctor's inclusion and also is set around the same time or similar time to a Ood Halloween. Maybe it's set at Halloween 1999, but it's still San Francisco 1999, the same year as the TV movie. I'm counting it. I'm counting the TV movie for the setting, as well as the inclusion of the Eighth Doctor. Aliens of London and World War III, which could be swapped out with Boone depending on whether it's families of Slitheen or individual Slitheen, and that covers both the Ninth Doctor and the Slitheen's inclusion. I would have liked to have Long Game, but in terms of a shortlist, it's better to have a Slitheen story on board. Love and Monsters. Speaking of the Slitheen, their planet's twin, Clom, sends one of its people, an Absorbaloth, in this story, as it ties in with Jackie Tyler's involvement in Doomsday. Then we have The Wedding of River Song, which covers River Song and the Silence's inclusion in Doomsday. Then Cold War, which covers the Ice Warriors' inclusion in Doomsday, followed by Extremis, which could be swapped out with World Enough in Time and the Doctor Falls if the next story of the list is swapped out with the Power of the Doctor. Covering the 12th Doctor and Missy's inclusion in Doomsday, and finally The Haunting of Villa Diodati, which covers the Cybermen and 13th Doctor's inclusion in Doomsday. As mentioned, this story could be swapped out with another 13th Doctor story, like Power of the Doctor, for example, or Woman Who Fell to Earth, which means Extremis could be swapped out with World Enough in Time Doctor Falls. But excluding those and the Boomtown Aliens of London swap, I've settled on this list. Now, I did want to have a Long Game on here as well, but I thought, again, better to include the Slitheen over a possible... Like, instead of having a possible link to Long Game, even though it looked like a obvious yes when putting on the long list, for the short list, actually, it would be better to include a Slitheen story instead. Other stories that were considered on the long list that were cut, Planet of the Ood, because the setting of the TV movie, or at least the location at the same year, even if maybe Ood Halloween takes place a few months before the TV movie. It's the same place, almost the same time, and we need an Eighth Doctor story if possible. I wanted to see if we can get a story from each of the Doctors who appear. Almost didn't happen, but I have managed to make it work. So, if we're having the Eighth Doctor story, TV movie, and that does tie in with an Ood Halloween with the setting. But that does mean the Ood highlight episode is cut, sadly. Similarly, Into the Dalek is also cut, and this is why I ended up going back to Dalek Invasion of Earth for the First Doctor story with Ian and Barbara, was because Into the Dalek is being cut due to Rusty. Whilst he does appear, like with Sil, he doesn't really have as big of a role. But I've kept Trial of a Time Lord, the Mind Warp, because of the Sixth Doctor's inclusion. And the Sixth Doctor Sil story makes a lot of sense, with Sil briefly appearing in the Lost in Time games for Doomsday. But Rusty's inclusion, unfortunately, didn't quite make it. But we have Invasion Earth to cover the Daleks. And similarly, School Reunion and Smith and Jones didn't quite make the cut either, because whilst K9 does play a role in the two Lost in Time Doom stories, I think it's probably better to highlight Chameleon more due to the reveal in the first of those two games, with him having disguised himself as the 13th Doctor. We're also not sure which K9 it is. Come to speak, we don't actually know what Chameleon it is. I mean, it could be a parallel universe one, like the one in the Mark Gatiss Unbound Master um, universe. He still has a chameleon, so yeah, it could be an alternative universe chameleon, or maybe a new chameleon. And there's several other canines outside of the main four, so yeah, but I think showcasing chameleon was more important this time round. K9 could always come back in a later story if there is some sort of involvement from them. But because we need to get a couple of other stories in, featuring other characters from other bits or tying in more to those stories, I think we needed to have one or the other. And I think as much as King's Demons isn't great, it's probably the weakest story on this list, if I'm being honest. And School Reunion is much better than that. I think it would be better to showcase Chameleon more than K9 in the set. K9 again could always have his day another time. And Smith and Jones, the Jadoon just about briefly appears. So I think we have reason to include an episode featuring the Jadoon on the long list, but I think it's an easy cut for the short list. And lastly, Mission to the Unknown UCAN version. There could be some rights issues with that, but the BBC were able to put on YouTube, and I'm sure the University of Central Lancashire said that was okay. Whether, and like I said, with a home release, I'm not sure what the situation is with there, but we are presuming it probably will be included on a Mission to the Unknown and or Season 3 release in the future. But yeah, say it can go on Blu-ray, it can go on DVD and Blu-ray, no problems. Then because it's not the original episode, it's not really one we would put on the shortlist officially, but this is one that could maybe be a bonus episode, bonus special feature, bonus content sort of thing, exclusively to this release for now, until the Mission to the Unknown or Season 3 release. Like how Episode 3 of Galaxy 4, Airlock, was made available individually as well as a cut down recon, included on the Aztec Special Edition DVD before the full animation version a few years later. So it could be like that. It's a bonus release exclusive to this set before its own individual release later, like an animated a version of the episode done later. And also being included with all these episodes would be all of the Doomsday webcast teasers thing. You know, those awful. Well, nobody likes them. Those not very good. The introduction and the teaser to K9's inclusion. There you go. There's your K9 inclusion on the set. So yeah, those would be included as well, and that would be the only webcast minisode Doom stuff, live action TV stuff, or not even TV, webcast stuff for Doom. So I think those are definitely no-brainer bonus features, as bad as they are. But you know, for it's like the webcast for with the Fugitive Doctor that we've got right now, like doing introductions to each chapter. Those would make sense to be bonuses on the Circuit Breaker Blu-ray. They probably won't, even though it's brand new filmed material with Joe Martin and some with Ingrid Oliver and Omari Douglas. I don't think they're going to be included as bonus features alongside the new Joe Martin interview on the Circuit Breaker Blu-ray. I hope the Joe Martin interview is actually in conversation with Matthew Sweet. That would actually be really good. Meanwhile, Time Lord Victorious, I don't think had any special features on the discs themselves. I think it's just the booklet. That's the bonus content in here. I could be wrong. But I think the discs are more centered around the episodes and stories on the discs that are included in the release. Hello everyone, Nick here. I'm currently editing the video and I realised I hadn't provided a title for what the release would be called, as both the Time Lord Victorious and the upcoming Circuit Breaker ones have subtitles to subtitle names. So Time Lord Victorious is The Road to the Dark Times, which is what I sometimes quite often actually referred to it in the video instead of the Time Lord Victorious one, whilst the Circuit Breaker one was I called it Circuit Breaker's release. But it's got the subname The Black Archive Files. So for Doomsday, I had a few ideas. Some of them could work. One of them was Tales of Doom or Stories of Doom, but I felt that felt more like it was talking about the character rather than being a clever tie-in name, a funny name. Because even though these stories do have characters that do meet or tie into situations or scenarios in the Doomsday stories, the title does imply it's more about Doom herself, the stories of Doom, rather than the stories that we are tying into Doomsday on the release, to give Doomsday a release. Another one was All Routes Lead to Doom, which is a little bit more accurate because, again, tying in with Doomsday through characters or scenarios. But I didn't want to have another title similar to The Road to the Dark Times, which is what it sounds like, nor anything like, say, something to like another one similar to the Black Archive Files. So I think what I've gone for is it's not all. It's also it's a little accurate, even though release wise it's after the multimedia event is finished. Aside from the Titan graphic novel compilation of the two comics they released, and depending on the hypothetical release date in October and November 2023, maybe that web game as well. But I went with Countdown to Doom, because it's, again, stories tying into Doom via the characters and or scenarios. Even if it's released after the story's done, it's still a clever tie-in title, and it's sort of more accurate than the other ones. So I decided to go with that. Or Countdown from Doom, perhaps, as an alternative, as it's afterwards. But yeah, I'm going to go with Countdown to Doom or Countdown from Doom. It's a good title for something. So I thought it'd be a fun one. But if you've got any other suggestions, do drop them in the comments down below. In terms of the number of episodes included in my one, it's 6, that's 12, another 4, that's 16, 2 is 18, then another 4 is 22, then 1, 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So it's 30 episodes individually, although the length of 31 because the TV movie is double length of a new series episode. And if we're going by Classic Who standards, it's almost 4 episodes long. So 30 episodes of various lengths. Some of them are, all of them are 25 minutes for the Classic Who episodes, and 45 to 50 minutes for the new Who episodes, and 86 minutes for the TV movie, as this is the pre-restored version, not quite 90 minutes for this one, for the UK release. So, yeah, so 30 episodes across 12, plus possibly Mission to the Unknown as a bonus. But 30 episodes over 12 stories. I think that's a good shout, come to think of it, considering that this one had 7 stories, but it consisted of 26 episodes. And Circuit Breaker, it's got 10 stories, but it's only 17 episodes. So 30 episodes over 12 stories makes a lot of sense. And with a possible bonus episode 31, 13th story with Mission to the Unknown UClan version as a bonus feature. But again, that's if they include that, if they did that. I'm not even sure if they would include the webcast, but this is my hypothetical version. So I'm saying definitely at least for the webcast and a possible interview, maybe for UClan's Mission to the Unknown. So now the question for all of you at home is, what would you put on a hypothetical Doomsday compilation tie-in Blu-ray? What stories would you include, more episodes? Sticking to what is included in Doomsday, what stories they tie into, if any, which characters appear, which stories fit best and cover those characters. Like, you can have stories that cover multiple characters that appear across Doomsday, You can choose episodes that are more reflective of those characters that don't have to cover other characters in that same in a story from my list. So, like, say, if you want a different Sixth Doctor story, you don't want Syl in it, you could pick, say, talekd Simon because the Sidemen again. You could pick the Mark of Rani, Good Adventures of Varys instead of Mind Warp if you want Syl inclusion. For example, or if you wanted the long game over a Sliving story from series 1, if you want School Reunion over King's Demons, so on. So yeah, put down what your list. The only thing is you would have to make it no more. I would say 6 to 12 stories is your restriction. Stories, not episodes. Otherwise, well, that would be either a lot of classic Who episodes or a lot of individual new Who episodes. So yeah, you've got 6 to 12 stories. I would recommend going for 12 if you've got a lot listed down, like I did. So fill out 6 to 12 stories that you would put on this hypothetical release if you were the one putting it all together, and also if you were to add any special features, such as the promo webcasts or brand new interviews, etc. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I can understand if this video is quite long, talking about a topic not everybody would be very interested in, but I hope you liked my discussion and challenge for this hypothetical release, and hope you enjoy Circuit Breaker. We may talk more about it or the other 2 multimedia projects in future videos. That's not a guarantee though, it's just a possibility. But we hope you enjoyed this video and enjoy Circuit Breaker if you're contributing to it. If not, okay, we hope you enjoy not bothering with it, or whatever bits of Circuit Breaker you do want to dip in. You can dip in and out of that, as well as the other 2, as much as you want. So anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.